Hello, hello. Good afternoon. Apologies for being 30 minutes later than the set timetable, but these things happen. And I think we've got such a strong lineup for you this afternoon that we'll be more than make up for it. So my name is Richard Morrow. I'm chairman of a thing called the Melbourne Mining Club. I come here from Australia. And I'm very excited to be here, and I'm even more excited seeing how many delegates that have come together, and the sort of language that we're hearing about people coming together and really looking to forge what our conference is all about, the future of minerals. So I'm delighted to be here, and I'd like to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for the invitation to attend and to come together here today. Also like to thank our sponsors and partners whose names we can see behind me. Without sponsors, these sort of events never happen. We've got an exciting program this afternoon. We're going to be across a series of panels that can deal with issues that are the very heart of building the mines of the future. We're going to heard how important this was in the plenary session this morning, which I think you're all there. And if you didn't, you really missed a fantastic plenary session, some of those speakers. It's very easy to look at the issues facing the mining industry and seeing them as roadblocks, but there's more. Today's panels that you're going to hear from will show that there's also opportunity. I think it's an important word, and it's coming across more and more as opportunity. So we'll be examining this opportunity, things like decarbonisation, recycling, how mining can protect and enhance biodiversity, green metal hubs, and metals of the future. We'll be going to some interesting places here this afternoon, so strap yourselves in. Our first panel moderator is the legendary Peter Bryant.
Thank you.
Our time frame's tight, and we're going to hear a lot from them. Peter, over to you.
Right, Richard, thanks so much. Delight to be here. So this panel is very illustrious, and we'll introduce them as we go. So we're going to talk about the big topic of decarbonisation. And if you came here to listen to how we electrify 300-ton trucks, I would suggest you go grab a cup of coffee, because that's actually not what we're going to talk about. But I think what we'll be doing is just having a conversation. And what I want to do is just put some context around, and then we'll be going around each person. So why are we doing decarbonisation in the context of a just energy transition? So the mining sector has a responsibility to provide resources that are responsibly extracted and processed. And there's more than just decarb, but it's a very important aspect. And when we look at decarbonisation, we're talking about the mobile fleet, we're talking about fixed plant processing, and even through smelting, because some of the mining companies do smelting. And we also want to look at the nexus with water, because I think we always need to talk about energy and water in the same breath, because they're very much related. And other areas we'll cover, areas of energy intensity, waste to value, obviously efficiencies, and also how do communities fit in amongst all this, because I'm a big believer we should never just talk about, as they say, inside the fence. We should always be talking about how do we do decarbonisation, clean energy in the context of the communities in which we are operating, where that's relevant. So obviously before you do decarbonisation, you need to get a handle on the baseline, because what are you decarbonising and what's your baseline? So John, who's the Vice President of the Colorado School of Mines, Global Future Energy Initiative. So John, you've been doing work on kind of taking a systems approach to baselining carbon emissions, and as an important starting point, do you want to kind of just talk a little bit about what does that actually mean and what are the things we need to think about?
Sure. So when it comes to the energy transition, we're very much focused on a systems approach to thinking about this. We think that the systems approach is really going to be required if we want to meet the goals that we have as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So if you look at the energy transition at the largest scale, we're very much focused on renewables as a source of energy for the future, but of course the renewables depend on all the raw materials that the mining industry can deliver, and there are limitations in how quickly that can come. So of course those two systems then are interconnected with oil and gas, and to manage the emissions from all of those, we need carbon capture, utilization, sequestration. Each one of those areas that I mentioned are large systems within themselves. So we have faculty at Mines who are very much focused on using a systems dynamics modeling approach to model these very complex nested systems. And the key idea is that you can perturb a complicated system with a management choice or a policy decision and see what the consequences of that are and potentially identify unanticipated consequences. So if you take that same modeling approach and scale it down to a mining operation, you might only look at, say, extraction and haulage of ore and waste. You might look at the process of crushing and grinding, processing the ore, and then your outputs. So you could draw a box around that. And each one of those are a system in themselves. So it becomes very complicated. So Shebnam Duzgan, who leads one of our decarbonization groups, is taking a machine learning approach to doing that modeling in a rigorous way. And so for just a very simple example that might seem obvious, first of all, the total carbon emissions over the life cycle of a mine also depend on the production output. But depending on the jurisdiction you're in, if you decide to electrify part or all of your system by tying into the local grid, if that local grid is powered by a coal generating power plant, then you've potentially increased your Scope 2 emissions to a greater extent than you would have by not electrifying to begin with. So it's very important to understand all of those connections. That's a very simple example, and to do it in detail is more complex.
Now that's important to kind of understand what all the different levers are.
Exactly.
And the consequences. So we've got Martin here all the way from Germany, Managing Director for the German Mining Association. And Martin, obviously you guys are dealing in a lot of areas, but maybe just start off with this nexus of water and energy. And, water's a key area. We know that Chile has banned the use of, groundwater, but then that requires massive energy for desalination, transportation of water, etc. So one area we want to talk about, do you want to kind of just unpack that a little for us and why it's important?
I will try so. So first of all, to set you in the picture, so Germany is probably not well known as a mining country. We are not one of the biggest, but still there is a lot of mining going around in various fields. And the good thing with that is that we have a lot of technology development. And this comes back to your previous question. So why decarbonization? Certainly mining is part of the industry as a whole. In Germany, we set the plan that we want to be carbon free by the year 2045. So that's not a long way to go. So we have to put in measures into the mines to decarbonize. So looking on concrete on the water issue, which is much more under focus here in this area of Saudi Arabia and certainly in South America, where climate change is already going on and where you have a lot of evaporation. And the mining industry as a whole is a larger consumer of water, and especially fresh water. So in there we have to look at different issues. It's the treatment of the water on the mine site, which is much important or becomes new importance. You have to retreat it, you have to double use it for the various purposes. John named the purposes. They are manifold. That is one thing. In many areas, and especially Chile, water is not available. The government now made a ban on that, and so it's not allowed anymore to take fresh water because there are some reasons running out of water. So, and this leads us to the desalination of water and the requirement. So, desalination plants at the mine site or outside the mine site with larger units is a solution which is already practiced in Chile. But how would that work in a decarbonized world? Only if you operate desalination plants also with renewable energies. And this leads us to the decarbonized mine of the future, having the renewable energy directly on site. The good thing, and this is valid for Chile as well as for Saudi Arabia, is that they are in a really preferred region to use wind power as well as solar energy. So there are all possibilities to do so and install autonomous energy sourcing at the mine sites, and then to introduce the different measures which are required to get efficiency also in the water area.
Great. Thanks, Martin. So, Maya, we're going to switch gears away from technology now. And I mentioned communities, and often we forget about communities, particularly when it relates to energy. Can you talk to us about, how should we be thinking about communities, their energy needs in the context of the mine energy and decarbonisation and prosperity for communities, which we know are all important. You're passionate about it, I'm passionate about it. So...
Well, thank you. And actually, technology is part of what we're doing with communities. And when I first saw the title innovation, I thought we better be exciting, and we are. And that's where I'm very excited to highlight Resolve Sister Organization Regeneration Enterprises. And in essence, what Regeneration Enterprises is seeking to do is reframe the whole perspective of waste decarbonization and tailings and all that, reframe that in terms of a resource, including for communities as well. So what Regeneration does, very excitingly, is looking at mined out areas, waste and tailings, a lot of those which are in communities, and remining those for critical minerals, but also with an eye to restoration. And don't take just my word for it. There's a reason Rio Tinto is all in on Regeneration Enterprises. And part of that work goes to the heart of anchoring that even on nature-based solutions to decarbonization, working directly with the communities. This also comes from, it's been proven, for example, in what Resolve did with salmon gold as well. In some of the communities in Alaska. And that's why, again, companies like Apple does have salmon gold in its supply chain. So is this approach, in summary, to think of decarbonization, to think of the energy needs in terms of how this is also a resource for communities as well as the industry? Great.
Thanks very much. And we've got to mention you're with Resolve Organisation based in Nairobi. So moving Isis, Deputy CEO of Maden. You guys are doing some really interesting things that you shared with me a couple of days ago around waste to value, closed loop systems in the areas that we've been talking about. It'd be great to kind of understand what you guys are doing both today and in the future in terms of decarbonisation, and also the water aspects. It would be great to share as well.
Good. Actually, in Ma'aden, we are relatively a new mining company, so we utilize the best available technology in our business. Give you an example, in the phosphate, we are not importing water and we are not importing energy, so we utilize the waste heat coming from our processes to the last drop. Also within this complex, we are producing about 1,038 blue ammonia, which is considered as really a good source of clean energy. In the decarbonization, in our strategy is really to reduce our emission by 2040 almost by 60%. and our base is 2020. We defined the three levers to achieve our strategy. The first one is renewable, and the renewable is, we have three major initiatives. One is a mega production of renewable energy, which is going to be used in the smelter. That's about 500 megawatt. We just signed the contract to pursue this project. The second level is really a small units which is serving most of our mine. We will start with Al Baitha, the bauxite mine, where we are trying really to get rid of the diesel and put the renewable energy. And also the second one is direct use of the concentrated solar power in producing steam for the refinery. This project also have been signed a few months ago, and we are working on this. The first unit started with the renewable energy is the Mansoura Masarra gold mine, which is started last quarter. We started the production. And this is one of the steps which we are proud of. The water story in Ma'aden is really a very good story to tell. In the water, we are bringing the water from Taif, which is declining there, so we don't use that much energy to bring it. So we bring the water, the recycled water and treated water from Taif, and use it to produce the gold at the level of 60 to 70% of our gold production is based on the treated water or recycled water. In the north, we just commissioned a project where we reduce our consumption from the aquifer by 50% in the fertilizer. And we have research to modify our process to accept the recycled water and also to improve it to 100%. Our refinery using zero water, so we have 100% recovery. And the second lever is really working in the process. And the process which is emitting less carbon is really our target. We are working with our partner. We are expecting really a breakthrough in the aluminum industry by the year 2027. We will have a technology which is dramatically reducing the emission from the smelter by almost 50%. So this is how we are and what we are doing in Ma'aden. We are looking really in the future, and we are cooperating with most of the Saudi Research and Development Center to resolve those issues. And also we have a relationship and close coordination with some international innovation firms, which we are looking really to find something in the industry.
Thank you. They're very exciting, and also the advantage of not having too much of a legacy, right?
Yeah.
That really helps a lot. So last but not least, Syed, you're with SABIC, which I think, I always like to think there's a lot to learn from other industries. So it'd be good if you could just kind of explain a little bit about what SABIC's doing around decarbonization, and maybe what could mining learn from what you guys are doing.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I think it's a common challenge. If you look at the chemical industry or even the minerals in general, there are common challenges, as well as if you look at the enablers, it is the same. So we are in SABIC, when we developed our carbon neutrality strategy, which was announced in 2021 during the Saudi Green Initiative, we utilized the framework of circular carbon economy, which is the concept or the platform that initiated by Saudi Arabia during the G20. And we believe this is the right platform to address the climate change and the carbon neutrality, for a very simple reason. If you see the elements of the circular carbon economy, or the 4 Rs, which is the reduce, the recycle, reuse, and remove. It is address all the issue related to the carbon footprint. And also, it is helping the industry as well as the business, depending on the affordability, depending on the availability of infrastructure to utilize one of these 4 Rs. So, utilizing the circular carbon economy as a framework, we develop our circular carbon economy. And if you look at our roadmap or our strategy, it started with the short term, where we already announced to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 and to achieve a reduction of 20% by 2030 globally from our scope 1 and 2. If you see the elements, first start with the energy efficiency and improvements, which is something that it can be done in the short term. It depends on where you are operating and your technology or your process that you are using. So this is, you can call it a low-hanging fruit, or this is the cheap when you look at the cost curve. Then looking at the renewable energy as a key enabler, especially for scope 2. Then we have the electrification combined with renewable energy. Electrification, we see there are things which can be adapted and deployed today, depending on the availability of renewable energy, but there are things which need to be developed or they need the technology enablers. Also, you have utilizing the hydrogen with all the colors, I mean the blue or the green as one of the enablers. CCUS, and this is something also we are considering. And the last is about the remove, which is related for the removing the CO2. The good thing that we are in SABIC, for instance, we started earlier, and we have the largest CO2 capturing in the chemical industry, 500,000, and we are utilizing that CO2 and convert it to valuable product. Also back to Saudi Arabia, the Circular Carbon Economy Program created multiple enablers, like for example, the CCUS hub, which was announced during the COP, where there will be 9 million of CO2, which will be captured and stored in the ground, and will be near to the Jubail area, and SABIC participating in this. Same thing for the renewable, same thing for the hydrogen. So there are things that to be learned, and we already part of our portfolio, we have the steel business. And we have also carbon neutrality. And as I said, it is the same. We have the CO2 capturing, we have the hydrogen, plus the energy efficiency. Yeah. Technology is a key enabler, and developing the technology, which required some of time, as well as the affordability and availability of funds to fund those projects, as well as from the market side. And we see now some of the customers now, they are start asking and questioning the carbon footprint of the product. So this is again another driver. And if there are some products, there will be some kind of premium. This will be first to come, and this will be very easy to support from a financial point of view.
Yeah, no, thank you, Fahd. And I think you kind of illustrate you have to take multiple pathways. I think one thing that's, and I'm going to throw this out to everyone, one of the things that's unique about mining is we have a variable input. It's not constant. So let's take copper, for example. So Mark Kudafani always mentions the statistic that says to produce a pound of copper today takes 16 times the amount of energy than 35 years ago. And with declining grades, the energy intensity of mining is only increasing. So you're kind of pushing things uphill because we're consuming more and more energy to produce almost the same output. And we often talk comminution, the crushing of rocks takes, 6% of the world's electricity. So in the context of that, what do? Because I think we often talk about converting everything to renewable energy, electrifying, but to me, energy intensity is a key area. So maybe Martin, I'm going to pick on you. I don't know. Is that something you want to kind of tackle? Energy intensity, lower grades?
Yes, energy intensity, and I also grab again up the water topic. With that, because in everything what we have to do in the future, the the goal is to be efficient as possible. And to go more into the technology point of that, with regard to the desalination, there are different technologies around. In principle, you can choose between thermal desalination and mechanical desalination. For example, here in Saudi Arabia, they use thermal desalination, yeah, because it's energy intensive, and Saudi Arabia is in the comfortable position as having lots of energy.
Yeah.
In other countries, it's different. Also in Germany, it's different. That's why the mechanical desalination is a preferred option, as it requires less energy than the thermal option.
Sure.
So, and significantly less energy, by about 30%. And this has certainly an impact on the cost of production of water. So, I mean, water costs something. If you want to produce water, you end up here in Saudi Arabia, even I would say you end up to 30 to 40 cents per cubic meter fresh water. But this could come down to 10 to 20 cents. It's the same like production of electricity, depending which kind of electricity generation you choose.
Yeah.
And if we are in the sand area, we are lucky, but we have to get there first, and that's the important thing.
Yeah. Maybe I'll go to you two as there's also, I mean, obviously copper, gold, energy. And so how does Maden look at energy intensity, and how have you got thoughts about reducing that, just reducing your overall power need?
Well, as I told you before, the problem that the target is very ambitious. And when you look to the spending in research and development and spending and ability to take risk in decommissioning and commissioning a new process, I feel that in the industry in general, people has to spend more, renovate a new technology. For example, the desalination, let us take the example of desalination, aluminium, ammonia and fertilizer. Those processes are probably 100 years. And they reach the perfection from traditional point of view. And I think we need really to spend more in research and development, try to find out new ways. For example, on the aluminium, we are using a huge amount of carbon in order to have a cathode and anode. There is a huge research now going on, but we need really to push it harder of the inert anodes. The inert anodes is reducing dramatically the emission of CO2. Just go back 15 years ago, not all the CEOs think about what is the emission of this plant. It's usually what is the cost and what's the benefits and what's the IRR by the end of the day. Today, things are totally changed. And I'm expecting that research and developments will be really one of the major areas where people need to spend money. CEOs, stakeholders, they need to be encouraged to take the risk and lead the world into the bright picture which we are drawing today.
Great, I appreciate that. John, definitely have a point of view on this, yeah?
Yeah, I wanted to add something. So, to your point about looking for new ways to do things, we have a project right now that is simultaneous in situ extraction with CO2 storage. Okay. So, borrowing from the oil and gas industry to fracture the rock with horizontal wells, you have paired horizontal wells, you drive a CO2 saturated leachate across that system, extract about 80% of the material and leave about 60% of the CO2 in there to get to a net zero or net negative CO2 storage in that process. So that's just one example. The specifics of that are to low-grade rare earth ores.
Sure.
But there can be many other things like that, and that is at significantly reduced energy costs.
Yeah, and I think that gets to your point is to get some of these things out in the market to scale, we really need to drive up the investment
We
in
are
innovation. Yeah,
We are ready.
really, yeah, absolutely. So, Nay, I might go to you. I mean, you talked about the programs you have and community. How should mining companies be thinking differently, actually, in the context of that? Because you mentioned Rio's all in. What about the rest of the industry? What do we need to be doing to think differently?
I think the main thing is when we're looking at decarbonization from a wide lens, it's also, quite frankly, to see it as a business opportunity. Because the common theme running here are the operational efficiencies, and of course, behind that, the cost efficiencies. And very concretely, for example, be it for brownfield sites or closed out sites, a lot of that is on the books as liabilities. And they're just sitting there as liabilities. And one of the things Regeneration is doing as an energy transition startup, including in communities, is remining this, plowing back some of the proceeds from that into restoration activities, but working with communities to remine these areas in a way that transforms it from liabilities for communities as well as for businesses into assets. So it's frankly, not to overuse the cliche, it's about doing well by doing good. And it's a tremendous business opportunity.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think I think mining companies have got to stop looking at communities as a risk to be managed, and it is and a partner. So, Fahad, I might go to you, and we've talked about green steel. That kind of brings up the whole issue of Scope 3 for mining companies. I'd be interested in your perspective as kind of somebody in the steel industry. What would you want from the mining companies, if anything, to help you get to green steel? Where do you see the mining companies playing in that?
I think, if you see the industry today, you need to work across the value chain. And if somebody believes that he can do it alone, forget about it. So this is a challenge that it needs to be worked out across the value chain and companies as well as countries together. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to address this challenge. I'll just give some examples. Like, for example, we work with competitors like BSF and Linde, for instance, to do the electrification of the cracker. And this has contributed to 90% of the emission for the CO2, which is one of the biggest in the chemical industry, if you look at it as one piece. So this is tell you that the collaboration here in the technology development will be very helpful, even between competitors, because they have a common goal to do. Now, for the mining, if you see today the contribution of the mining, it is something like maybe 2 to 3% of the total carbon footprint. I will not say they're having an easier job, but one straightforward is about the electrification as one thing. But electrification means required a lot of energy, which is renewable energy, and again the energy efficiency will play a role. So collaboration is something very important. Also, the perception today about our industry, the chemical as well as the minerals, it's not as bad as it used to be before, because they are providing materials to provide solution to address the current challenges.
Sure.
Because without those minerals, you will not see the EV cars, you will not see from the polymer, you will not see some of the light materials. So it is part of the solution. It's not only the part of the problem. No, we are now part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think the importance of partnering and collaboration, I think one of the things that's coming out of this is we've spent about half the time not talking about technology, but collaboration, investment, working together, and I think that's important. So we've got our warning, so I'm going to go around. One takeaway for the audience that you would like people to walk away with, and you have 30 seconds to give that. So, John, can I start with you? 30-second, one takeaway for the audience.
Mine is quite simple. So we can't possibly hope to solve this problem unless we take the systems approach.
Okay. I think it's a good one. Systems approach, everyone. Martin?
For me, it's important that everybody rethinks the mine of the future, which is decarbonized and use on a high proportion, renewables, which includes e-fuels as well. I didn't mention that before.
No, great, thank you. Yeah, reimagine how mining is done is important. Maya, from you.
Waste and closed down sites should not just be a liability. These are assets as well, and tremendous business opportunity.
I agree, yeah, stop thinking of things as risks. Aziz?
Yeah, I think ESG in general, it's not something which is being a cost. There is a big opportunity also in developing our ESG, whether it's from environment point of view or from a governance or from social responsibility.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Fahad?
I think if you see the estimated investment required to decarbonize until 2050, we are talking about $275 trillion. It's a huge amount.
Yep.
We are talking about 10 or 9 trillion almost in the every year that you need to spend to decarbonize. So 3 key elements or takeaways. 1, technology. Number 2, talking about the infrastructure. Number 3, which is about the policy and regulations that is available. This is the key enabler that's required to do the decarbonization.
Right, thank you. And the one thing I'd add is that, you know, what we're talking about and the magnitude of the task, and we've kind of touched on it, really requires a paradigm shift and mindset shift in the industry. But I think most importantly, you know, the industry persistently underinvests in innovation. And I think if that continues, we won't get to the goals that we've been talking about today. Everything will be left in the lab. So we really need to lean in and invest. I think one of the exciting things with FMF is that we're seeing that dialogue about really driving innovation and collaboration in new ways. So please join me in thanking this very illustrious and diverse international panel for the discussion. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As the panel is leaving the stage at the moment, please give them another warm round of applause. Very, very topical, something we've really got to get our teeth into. And if I could ask our next speakers to just go down the back and mic yourselves up. Apologies to anyone in the room called Mike. That's good. Well, thank you. I know we're half an hour behind our starting time, but I think we can all drag something new out of what is essentially a topic that makes a heck of a lot of sense, that we've got to reuse, we've got to use more efficiently. And it really plays into what we're going to hear from our next panel, where the topic is the, recycling, substitution, and the circular economy. We'll just bear with me just a short while we get our speakers today sorted out and mic'd up. Beauty of technology. Just bear with me, short period of time. Thank you.